See here. Okay, just to let everybody know, we had a heated debate before this started. So, so I'm going to turn it right over to Darnell to do the introduction for the show.
Can I do an introduction and not get cut off? Well, I would like to welcome everybody to class in session where I have on occasion been the professor, but apparently today I'm definitely going to be the student. And we got Dr. Sarita Stevens. You know, some people get that title and don't know how to act.
Oh, here we go. I was a doctor before I got a dissertation, before I
Keep it
defended.
going, keep it.
I understand. I'm just saying.
I
Now,
love.
my only thing is that I'm just saying, Mr. Grimes, could you imagine how intolerable this relationship would be if she got her PhD and I didn't have mine?
Oh no.
I'm just saying.
But audience, I
She
do
at least
know this.
look, she got to at least respect me on paper, but we
Just
know in real
enjoying,
life.
I'm just enjoying the intellectual exchange
What
between
intellectual
Now,
two.
exchange?
I do want everybody to know
That was a
that.
bunch of poppycock and balderdash.
Okay.
Now, here we go.
You see
Now
the
we got the
language I
male Mary
use?
Poppins.
Between
Now we got the
two
male Mary.
highly intelligent people.
Here is the deal about the doctorate. I don't care if people call me doctor. I don't care about any of that. What I cared about was the content of my paper.
I
Content of
cared
my
about
paper.
her not having one, and I didn't have one.
Oh, that's very superficial. That's
And
actually
and
what
I got
we're talking
one.
about today.
I got one before her.
Wow. Wow. That's so
Humbled.
amazing,
I'm
isn't
humbled
it?
because I have
I'm
neither. So
petty.
I'm sitting in
I'm
real good
petty.
company. And
Here's the deal. Here's why it doesn't even matter about having a doctorate.
Oh,
Because
here
we
we go.
still only use probably about 17 to 20% of our brain. We still, with our brain has the ability to use much, much more than cognitive. And because we, kind of don't believe in that, we don't believe in that how that gut feeling
How
speaks
do we know that?
and the you know that because some people are able to define it. Some people are able to say, and you're able to tell it. You're able to say, I, for whatever reason, just get a bad vibe from that person. Or because you can actually hear what they're saying to you, that they're sending you a message by their tone, by the content of their statements. And that's when you get that feeling like, I don't really
The brain,
like
what
them.
you were saying about the brain, how do we know that most of it we don't use?
Well, that's scientific. They do say that
Like seeing what lights
well,
up.
we don't
what
use all of the neurons to our brain because we don't learn at the. That's why when people like how in China they study for that test and their kids are on IVs while they're studying 24 hours a day
I
because
ain't
they,
never heard
they
of
have
that.
to. Yeah, it's a real. It's just
what
it's current. They're doing that.
what I think what actually is not stated is that we use the majority of our brain. We just don't use at the same time.
Mm,
So what they say is we only use a portion, but we actually use probably 100% of our brain. We just don't use them in the same for the
the
same
highest level
reasons.
of capacity.
Exactly right. Because the
So
brain at
what
best is very primitive,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had to do some things in order to survive that allows us to use various portions of our brain
Mm-hmm.
more than cavemen did before, or more than folks who were hunter gatherers or whatever, because
So
of how we
so
develop socially.
the meditative religions, that's why they believe that
Yes.
meditating and being quiet can
Right.
connect you to
Mhm.
information that's stored in your brain. And so if you're able to kind of intellectualize that, like use that for, when you're studying, like the meditation and the, like going over thoughts in your head. Also, when you do that to solve a human problem or solve a life problem, something will occur to you just like that. They call it an epiphany. Like it'll occur to you, like, oh my goodness, it was always there.
It's always there.
Just that
but
you didn't quiet yourself enough.
And that's
so,
why we don't get kids with a blank slate like we used to teach, right? We see kids. Well, kids don't know much. Kids know a whole lot more than you think they know.
faster.
before you get them in class.
Yeah, they've been exposed to that social media.
I had
Exactly.
now, Sarita, you would probably know this a lot better than me. I don't think kids are any different as far as when you get them in the class. I don't see kids any different than in the 70s when it was us in the 80s. Is are they are because you see them on more of a mass scale. Are they different?
Oh, without a doubt. They've been exposed to information prior to their brain's maturity level being able to decipher the information properly, which is why they have parent controls, because they're saying to the parents, you got to get in there. You got to have somebody that watches over them and somebody that will explain information that they are trying to put into categories, which they may put into a bad category. Like if you're constantly letting that child look at, modern music videos and they hear women referred to as this and that, it becomes socialization for them. It becomes like, oh, well, that's what a woman is. So if they learn that at 5, 6, and 7, at 8, 9, and 10, when they're entering into the age of reason, that is what a woman is. And so, Mr.
Now,
Prince, would you agree that our kids come a little bit more, they have eyes wider open because they have been exposed to information?
I think kids have been so socialized differently because of what they're exposed to. Yes, they when we get them, they're a lot more different than we were back in the 80s,
Yes.
70s, 80s, and 90s. But the mechanics are still there. The exposure is more. Like they're gonna go through developmental stages and milestones or whatever, just like we did. But what they're exposed to now is totally different
Mm-hmm.
than
okay,
what we were before.
let let me ask this. Let me ask this because I remember there were I can see more information or different information, but it was always different. Some kids were more hypersexual, some kids were thugs. So it just depended on what your home life was. And doesn't that stand to be true now? If I come from a conservative home, I'm be conservative. If I'm from a wild and out home, if I'm from a law breaking home, if I'm from so you still get the same, it's the same circus, it's just different clowns.
No, they have so much more context, like
Mm.
so much more context, both I mean, in every kind of way, auditory, visual. They can actually see an example. I mean, they have so much more context than we had. We only had 5 TV channels and channel 32 with classics on it if we were lucky. They have thousands of media channels that they could have access to if a parent is not vigilant. If a parent is not, and even in everyday music videos that we would think, okay, it might be pretty safe for them to look like, no. And then people trying to stay relevant and using more shock type content. Our kids are exposed to things that are way above their ability to decode. They they
Mm.
they they are just it just makes them these grown individuals that you have to work with. You have to figure out, now how am I going to work with that? Or what would I tell a child that's had that experience? How would I?
Now, how do you teach somebody that has a lot of information misplaced? That's what it sounded like. Like
But
I got all this information, I'm not able to really process and contextualize it. So now I've misplaced it.
you have to do some reprogramming, or you have to do some things that gives people that gives them a different optic. Because if they have been raised in an environment where say like that drinking is normal or whatever, you have to at least give them an alternative. And then you have to show them examples of what drinking would lead to, what drugs actually leads to, what prostitution leads to. Because see, it might be normalized from their point of view. And once you give the examples of what it leads to, then and a pathway. here's how you might be able to avoid that. And that's why it's important for kids to have some structure somewhere, whether or not it's Mr. Holmes down the street or Miss Odessa, they can tell them like, that's just wrong. Somebody that,
Are kids still looking for structure?
what do you think, Mr. Grimes? I think kids, because we're educators, I think kids are still looking for structure. But what do you
Yeah, I
think?
do. No matter what kid I get, and I'm talking about kids in the alternative setting, I think kids still they're looking for it and they want it because they know that the consequences of what they've experienced and what they experience is really not healthy. But what we've done is uh as society, we've taken away the guardrails a lot of times and we've kind of left kids to their own demise. And so what we grew up to be abnormal, they've normalized.
Hmm.
So allow them to
Wait,
understand.
don't go past that. Don't go past
Okay.
that. You said what? Give me an example. What we see as abnormal, they have normalized. What? Give me an example. What we talking about?
Understanding the difference between or understanding where the line of authority is. I mean,
Mm,
I didn't walk up to the police officer and say, hey, but you get my face because I'm gonna kick you. And I mean, we understood what the authority was. We understood that the authority was at home, and that um was
okay.
was already established. So if I acted a fool outside the house, then that means I'm acting a fool inside the house, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the more the
Mm-hmm.
safeguards, the safety rails were there at home, the less I acted out in public. And
We
I
still almost believe that. We still kind of believe that, as 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 people that are trying to develop kids, we'll assume, oh, that's what's going on in their house. Do you agree with that? When you get a kid that's just unruly, oh, it's something going on in their house. And more than likely it is.
it probably is. But
Mhm.
I think when we were growing up, we pretty much knew we socialized differently. And let's say after probably 2013, when kids were much more exposed to the internet and
Social media. Hmm.
to social media, before that, we actually we typically label them as the internet kids. Before that, they were the generation prior to that were probably the last I'm gonna go to your house and spend the night kids, or we're gonna play together kids. So
Hmm.
you had more physical socialization probably prior to 2010, 2013. And I see it with my own kids, right?
And some of those
And so
kids
it's different.
also were exposed to adult behavior live. Like they were able
Yes.
to come to their family parties that were adult parties that they
Yes.
should not have, just seeing the videos of 2 and 3 year olds weaving through adults, that's drinking and listening to crazy lyrics, and the kids are listening to it at the same time. So that was happening in the 90s leading up to the 2000s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you
And
know what?
so
We did not define our topic. Do we want to define our topic?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Because we're
Define the topic.
29 minutes in and we didn't define our topic. Our topic is searching for social acceptance or searching for acceptance, a social poison. And we're going to attempt to define why human nature through Maslow's, because we always use Maslow's, Erickson, why human nature is to seek acceptance and how sometimes you really step on landmines and how to avoid that, how to avoid drinking the poison. So I know our topic has been kind of off because we're taking it to the kids. But in the Erickson model, we're going to talk about the two phases. One is the identity versus role confusion. That's the adolescent age 12 to 18, when individuals are trying to explore and figure out who they are. Who do they get that from? It used to be from examples right around them. But now it's from the wide internet and social media, and there's so many other variables there. And then we're going to explore. Okay, yes, I was going to finish the topic. With
I
what?
just want to ask a question before I forget it though.
Okay.
Are we the old people that yelling that the problem is rock and roll?
No, because like if we can categorize this in human developmental phases, like for example, the identity phase, the role confusion phase, that's ages 12 to 18. The intimacy versus isolation. So intimacy is like, okay, if I'm running into all kinds of problems and I get away from relationships, when that is absolutely the last thing you need to do. You need to go around, iron sharpens iron. So you need to go around like-minded, successful or like-minded people that are like-minded like you are, and they're doing very well in whatever that discipline or whatever that is. And so you have the choice between just isolating yourself and just living alone. And there are a few geniuses that were able to do that, like Tesla was able to do that,
Mm.
but most people can't because the human one of the human needs on the hierarchy human needs is social acceptance, is what people think about me.
What I was just saying, as far as our talking about the internet, that when you were talking about that age group, I think you said 12 to 18,
Mhm,
when you're trying to identify yourself, and like we keep going back to the internet, myself included. I
mhm.
was just saying, are we going back to that? It's that rock and roll music, or it's that jazz, or it's that bebop,
No,
or
I think that I think examples, like the examples you see, affect the way your norms, or just like Mr. Grimes said, that it affects the way you adjust your norms, or it affects the way your true values. Like there's no more fire and brimstone, like walk straight, all girls wear dresses,
Mhm.
all guys have to wear a tie. That's no longer connected to human achievement, or what I'm going to achieve in life.
so
There.
am I completely out of date on before it's the internet, before it's the music, before it's the video games, everything rises and falls with mom and dad, or whoever's rearing you, grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt. It's the parents. Is before we get to anything else, it's the parents. Am I out of date with that? And I truly am asking that question. I'm not leading the witness.
I think to some degree we are, um, because it's another stage of generation, generational, understanding of this is the new norm, and this is and really, and I'm glad you asked that question because I'm kind of stuck between three worlds in terms of baby boomers, millennials, Gen Xers. I'm stuck between those things because now we get so much rapid fire information that judges a lot of things I consider to be normal probably less than 10 years ago. And so now I battle with, because I was born in 65. So I mean it's like that baby boomer stage versus the millennial stage is like, okay, this we still have some defined norms, but today it's like so much stuff is coming in so rapidly that it's like this just stuff is just not. It's not a matter of generational differences. It's just a matter of environmental and physical, emotional, mental health and wellness. I know for me, um, I think that's what concerns me more than anything else. Is the internet the new television? Well, probably so, but TV and this stuff today is just no comparison because these kids have access to pretty much everything, and
Oh.
it's at the tip of a finger. One slide
I
left
just
or
didn't.
right can expose them to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't want to lose that big. But go ahead, finish framing us up. You
So
were
yeah,
at.
I think to some degree we are.
Oh, okay.
We're like, am I too antiquated to understand what's happening? To some degree, it's like this is wild. But to a large degree, it's like if this is the new norm, then this is what I have to do. And I guess I'm talking
Mhm.
more from an educator standpoint as opposed to a parental
Okay.
standpoint. Uh,
Okay.
but I don't know, Doc. Dr.
but
Stevens? What are you
so
seeing?
yeah, go ahead, pick us back up on where you were. You were saying we're using Maslow's, we're using Eric Erickson's.
Well, you know what? It's just when you were just talking about that, you know, a lot of times, we can't talk about this without mentioning religion or some kind of religion when it comes to families. So I just kind of want to give an example through like the Asian culture. And I'm trying to think of how to pronounce it. I think it's pronounced filial piety. It's Filial, piety. And that is like Confucius reference, or in that Confucius teaching, the reference to your respect and consideration of your ancestors and your generations. And so there was a study done in the 70s, and they were trying to figure out why doesn't the new immigrant Asian why don't they get in trouble? And they didn't get in trouble because they had this
Mhm.
honor of their household. Like you don't bring dishonor to your household, especially if your parents are working hard to put a roof over your head. Your job is to just do what you're supposed to do for your age range so that, they can help you continue. And there was this understanding that you do not bring shame to the ancestors. And
Yeah,
that's what
that's filial piety.
filial, I can never pronounce it right. Is it
Yeah,
filial,
filial, filial. The
filial,
root word is family.
filial, filial,
Yeah,
filial,
filial piety is the
filial.
virtue, respect, obedience to care for one's parents, elders, and ancestors. That is also a traditional virtue. That's a traditional African virtue
Yes,
when you're dealing with your ancestors.
So the important part is that is the cornerstone for socialization and for social
yes.
relationships.
Mm.
So you know that your social relationships should be anchored on the fact that you are not going to take dishonor to your household and to your generations. But somewhere along the way, because during the human developmental stages, all of this information and a lot of it is corrupt information. And we know that corrupt information, I mean, bad suggestions corrupts good manners. We know that, but it's a constant flow and it's instant.
Wait. Say that again.
Sometimes it's right here. It's a
Say
constant
that
flow
again.
of negative
Corrupts good
information.
manners.
What's the biblical expression?
Evil communication
Evil
corrupts good morals, good
communications, right?
manners. Yes.
Evil communications corrupts good manners.
Evil
So,
communications corrupt good manners. So that's a good one.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so you're constantly receiving that communications through here. Now, and it's just through popular culture, some of the things that we're accepting, we've gotten away from many social norms. So we're accepting these things. So you tend to forget that, well, that'll bring shame to mom and dad. You tend to that's not in the framework of American culture. And it needs, and that's not, I'm saying American culture, not
American, you're right.
right. I mean, you're right, because
Hmm.
that's any race. So we somehow have to put back into we have to share with youth that are in that stage where they're defining themselves, right? The identity versus role confusion stage, which is the adolescent stage. We have to have trusting enough relationships where we can counter some of that information that they're getting. And
Hmm.
some of the
Hmm.
information that may be wrong, but they need it for social acceptance. They need it to be in the in crowd.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because, to a large degree, we because a lot of kids are still looking for that. I think the issue is that there's a gray line between the due north, or what's the center point, or how do I center myself back into a position where I can walk that path. So if that line is constantly being moved, like that due north, if that's constantly being moved, it's like, where are we socially? Where are we in our social development, in our understanding of moral concepts within the country in which we live?
Y-
And
y-
so, because a lot of stuff what we do violates or goes against Easternized concepts, like those that are Asian, or those that are African,
mhm,
in terms of socialization, and how they value family and
mhm.
community. And so that's why there's a constant bumping of heads. Y'all too American. Y'all too westernized. Y'all too, you know what I'm saying? Because there is no filial process. There is that's gone, right? Or that's
And
out of their norm.
and you know what's sad? You know what's sad? Because it has been monetized. The
Yes.
confusion is there because it injects money into the
Yes.
economy. And so we've
Mhm.
literally sold the souls of our
Yes.
generation because
Yes.
it can be monetized. We know that sexy sales and gangster violence, all of those things, they sell. And so you keep that message out there because you know that it's destructive to the human developmental process. Now, the human developmental mind, the mind that is information scaffolds. And
Mhm.
so you know that if you can affect the person's ability to have a strong cognitive structure, and because having a strong cognitive structure goes with having normal social norms, because there are brilliant people in jail, right? So you want to have the genius also have some acceptable social norms so they don't get corrupt. But we're in a I don't even know what you call it, because it's almost like it's a place where all souls are for sale. And I guess that's the most simple way that I could put it. Even the souls of children.
Yeah. I think what concerns me is that we villainize and venerate those individuals that we want to consider to be the gangsters and those who are not.
And that, you know what? That's you said you villainize the gangster or the
Yeah, sometimes we give more credit to certain individuals who are gangsters and other individuals who are gangsters.
that's kind of historical. I mean, why
It
do
is
people
very
like
historic.
Bonnie and Clyde and James the
Exactly right.
Ripper? Like they,
Yes. But
uh
they still gangsters, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
And there are people that still like, love just that imagery. Yeah.
Yeah. And matter of fact, there's a museum in Las Vegas and it is all about gangsters.
Hmm.
So it's like, well, how do you glorify this group of gangsters over here, but you villainize this group of gangsters over here? Because we talk about Tupac who got murdered in Vegas. It's like, is he in that museum or not?
Well, he probably should be. He
Yeah,
probably
exactly right. So
would be.
again, but depending upon who we want, how we want to monetize those images are based upon who wants to control the markets,
Hmm.
and typically who determines how society views either side,
See,
but they still have the same objective.
I believe that the people who are brilliant enough, and I mean brilliant because brilliant can be both either positive or negative, be on the positive or
Exactly.
negative
Yes.
spectrum.
Yes. It's neutral.
Brilliance
Yes.
is brilliance, regardless of what the outcome is. But they are so brilliant that they know the psychology of Maslow. They know the
Of course.
psychology of Erickson.
Hmm.
They know what these things do and how these things interrupt progression or the natural process. Because even back to Maslow, right? The five things, right, that Abraham Maslow is saying that humans need: the physiological need, water, food, shelter, rest, those things. That's the first thing you need. Then the second thing is safety. You need to feel safe and secure. So you want to be around, be in a place where you feel like you can thrive. Belonging and love, the need for love, the intimate relationships, which intersects with that trust and intimacy phase of Erickson at the ages of 12 and
0 to
18,
8,
where
12,
you're
18. Yeah.
looking, where you're looking for, someone that you can trust that can tell you, okay, this is what you should be. Okay, so, and then the next stage is intimacy and relationships, things like that. And that's 18 to 40. Notice that that's right at the end of that is when people start to get isolated and lonely because they go through that goo of misinformation, which is why we have to be really, really careful with the evil communications because
So,
there's a lot of hurt.
right,
It
right.
creates a lot of human hurt, and it will throw you off of your ability to reach your highest level, which is self-actualization, where it also affects self-esteem because you're constantly adjusting yourself. I even went to the Cowboy Carter concert in my cowboy outfit. I thought it was kind of silly. I thought it was kind of silly, but once I got there, I'm like, okay, this is a
You
lot.
can see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm
it's a
like,
lot
and
deeper.
then seeing it, and I was at Soldier Field, so
Yeah.
seeing there's a huge stadium where all of these people, there were Furby cowboys, you know, there were transgender cowboys, it's just everything there, but people were trying to define, being, you're trying to connect and trying to connect socially through something. Now, because I'm old enough to know it's just a concert, it's just a concert. But I was watching the generations and I was watching how, that generation, that 18 to 40, that generation, they were really, really into it. Like all
Mhm.
dressed up, all, yeah, cowboy and sparkle. I saw a lot of tails. I'm like, why am I seeing so many tails? I saw a 6'9" Furby. I'm like, goodness gracious, that's the biggest Furby I've ever seen. You're right. And I mean, he had on a leather skirt, he had on a tail and he had some ears and so I'm like, this is human nature, wanting to belong, wanting to feel accepted and being a part of something, a part of a crowd. This is how they define their self-esteem. Or do they really? Do they go home at night when the sun goes down and feel the isolation and all of the eyes that say, whoo, that's the biggest Furby I've ever seen? Do they feel that? And most Americans, yes, they do. That's why you have the anxiety, the depression, the levels of depression, all of the things. Because while you're trying to make a statement about yourself, is that what you really feel? Are you
Yes. Is
really
that who you really are?
Are you really confident about that? And are
I,
and,
What
mhm.
it is isn't attention the new currency? People
Yes,
want
yes,
attention more than
but can
money.
but can
So
you can you spend it when the sun goes down and you're in isolation?
I don't think that I think that we are so transactional and immediate in our gratification that everything is immediate. I want this right now.
Hmm.
And I'll worry about 10 minutes from now, 10 minutes from now. Now, if I feel lonely when I go home, I'll go smoke up something and that'll take care of that.
Oh wow, which
But
is why we have addictions, which is why.
exactly right.
that's what I'm
We're
saying. Everything is
self-medicating us
so
at that.
well, that's what I'm thinking. But I think there is I don't think that there is, oh man, I did that and everybody looked at me. I think it's no, I planned that. I wanted everybody to look at me. That was my gratification at the moment. Now, whatever is inspiring me to need this attention is going to be there when I go home. And then that may
Mhm.
be when I smoke a little something or do a little something else. But it doesn't seem like when you were talking about the ancestors is understanding the distance behind you, which means that you have a respect and an understanding of time, which will mean that you plan or are more likely to plan ahead of you because you're a time thinker. We don't think about, I don't remember until you brought that up. I really hadn't even processed. You may have people say something about elders.
Mhm.
I don't remember the last time I have heard someone say something about ancestors. And obviously, like when you lose your grandmother transitions into the ancestors. If you lose your brother transfers into the ancestors. I think because we have no chronological thinking anymore, we don't think about those of the past. We really don't think about the future, which is what makes this.
But that might be the solution to renewing American society. Because we
It
have
is.
some very basic things going on. So we have a serious civility issue, which is a whole nother
Mhm.
subject. That's probably a whole nother show. But
Mhm.
which the civility issue connects to what people feel about themselves. Most people
Mhm.
are looking for confirmation. They're looking for somebody to say, and I'm going to get this in because Darnell has argued with me not to mention Kendrick Lamar anymore, but right now I'm going to do it. There is a song called "We're Gonna Be All Right." I don't know if that's what the song
Gonna be
called.
all
I,
right.
we're gonna be all right.
Gonna be all
That
right.
that audience exploded, and we're seeing the back of his shining head.
Go to
But
be all
that
right.
audience, which was a very diverse audience, extremely diverse audience, they needed to hear that. So that lets you know that the human spirit, which gets discouraged sometimes, need to hear one or two people who are not judgmental say, listen, I know this is going on, but if you stay focused and you do the right things, it's going to be all right. That's very important because people hear the negativity all the time. When you like when somebody sometimes it's really comforting and
Isn't
somebody
that all church is?
yes, it is what church is in. And when we were stronger and when church was not so monetized, because now that there's this whole like money system
Yeah.
that's affiliated with church, and so some of the authenticity is gone
Go.
because
Mhm.
church is
Yeah, it's
that's
funded by the
an individual.
government now.
Well, that's
Faith-based initiative.
it's an individual. Do you know what I'm saying? That we all have the ability to have a relationship with the creator. Like we might need a guide every now and then, but we don't need somebody to tell us exactly how to do it because the formula is already there. They're spiritual.
But
That's
that but that's what I'm saying. You can get
it's so
into the
much that we're
spirit.
getting off. We're getting off.
Oh, I'm just commenting on that because you want to go Kendrick Lamar, and you were
Yeah.
saying that people need to hear that everything is going to be all right. And technically, that's what religion is.
That is what
I go to church on Sunday. I get charged up with people telling me I can be a better person and that things are either going to be good later or they're going to be better in the afterlife or it's going to be something. And that's what elevates me up. So I'm saying we have that in every aspect of our lives. You know what I'm saying? It's in the music,
But
but
you have
it's
to
in
some people get lost and they don't know where to find it. Like a person who feels hopeless, like when literally when the sun goes down. And I'm gonna bring up another song. Like I had to I really dissected the song All the Stars. And it says, is this the day that my dreams will come true? Because all the stars are approaching me and all the stars are closer. So that's an encouraging message that, you only have so much time in your life. I mean, that's biblical too. Teach me the number of my days that I might apply my heart to wisdom. Like that's
Mhm.
biblical. Like you only get so much time. You have to recognize when it's the right time. You can't, if
Mhm.
you get bogged down in depression, and believe me, successful people or people that other people think are
Very depressed.
successful
Hmm.
get depressed too. I mean, you
Hmm.
get discouraged, you get like, oh my,
Disheartened.
this
Hmm.
is because
Overwhelmed.
right, because of that overwhelming feeling that somebody is judging me.
Yes.
Somebody has something to say about me or think something negative about me, some kind of doubt in me, and I'm fearing that their point of view might be true. Oh,
or the more you get, the harder it is to keep it.
right, right.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Mr. Grams. I'm sorry.
And I'm glad that oh, this is right on time. So I think one thing that keeps us aligned is understanding the history of who we are and understanding how things have progressed over time and not to lose track of that. And I think for me, going to church allows me to understand how connected I am to the present because of what happened to my folks prior to that. And so when I give it to my kids, when I teach, I have to hit those different parts at one time.
You know what? We have to also trust them with the information. Sometimes
Yes, we do.
our generation thinks it
Yes,
might
we do.
be too
We
heavy.
can't safeguard
It's
everything.
like you can't, like you don't want to show them the lynching pictures. You don't want to show them this. You don't
Yeah,
want
sure.
their minds to get all messed up, but they might have to see that.
Yes, to give a context.
They may need to hear the story of Fannie Lou Hamer that picked 6 pounds of cotton at the age
Yes.
of 5 or 10 because they
Hmm.
gave her free like cans of meat like the hot tamale. They didn't give
Hmm.
her money. They gave her food. So they gave her
Yes.
stuff at the Maslow's lowest level, which is a
Yes.
physiological need. So
Yes.
so they need to
They
know
need to know that.
different opportunities for them through knowledge and seeking knowledge.
And not only that, we just had a reunion last weekend, right? , there were about 150 folks at the reunion. And in the process, we showed a family video about the ancestors and how we got to where we are. And it was quiet as quiet can be because everybody was so attentive on how we got here. But it left with a whole lot more questions than it did answers. And so the next time we meet, we will fill in some of those gaps as much as possible in order to allow future generations or this current generation and future generations to understand how we got here. And so it's incumbent upon everybody who's an adult, who was there, to pass that information on because we forget those because it's not being taught. History and Dr. Bolton, you and I have had this conversation about how history books have changed over time and
Well,
why.
we're in trouble now because if you
Yes,
federalize
yes,
excluding information where certain
yes.
races and certain classes of people were purposely kept in their economic status through psychological. We're talking about
So
social
reprogramming.
confirmation. We're talking about
Yes.
reprogramming people right now. And if you think that what's the word that they made the boogeyman? Oh, what's the law? The series of laws that kept people in a current. They made it the book. It's out of Oregon. It's out of Oregon State. Oh God, I can't think of the I
Well, the
can't think of
boogeyman
the
have been DEI, CRT,
it's CRT. It's the
CRT, critical race
remember that
theory.
critical race theory. Remember they made it the
Okay.
boogeyman. Critical race
Yes.
theory is
Yeah, that was the
absolutely
DEI
true.
before DEI. It was
But it's
CRT.
absolutely true. There were a series of laws that made sure, just think about those Southern laws where you couldn't vote. Or if you asked to vote, they would kill you.
Hear you.
There was a teacher and her husband, they blew them up on their front porch. Like,
Hmm.
how do you do that? Because they wanted the same wages from the United States Department of Education. So, you not wanting to tell that history and you not wanting to tell the history that you sent hundreds and hundreds of Black women overseas to decipher mail to fix the morale problem in for our American soldiers in World War II, and they did it with impossible odds.
Yes.
You put barriers in their way to make sure that they fail, but they succeeded. Why did we just learn about that last year? Why? So if you're saying that you want to eliminate information, you're eliminating it so that you can eliminate people's confirmation that they have the ability to achieve, that they have the
Who
ability to do something. Because
who do
people,
you think who do you think they are doing that?
well, right now you have the federal government saying that we want to eliminate all
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
history
But
of culture or different cultures.
who
We don't want you to know how different cultures contributed to
yeah, yeah. You
the
said we don't
greatness
want
of this country.
right. You said we don't want you to know. Who is the you?
Well, right now it's an establishment. So it is right now you have literally like you have like people with a legitimate authority, people who
I
have been
know.
elected into office.
That's
These people are not illegitimate people. These people are legit.
I know. That's not what I'm asking.
Hmm.
Who is it that they want to grow up not knowing that information?
Probably the people that reflect the people that they want to eliminate out of the history. Why would you eliminate people out of history? It doesn't make sense. Why would you eliminate their contributions out of history? It doesn't make sense. If they wouldn't have gotten to the moon without the Black female mathematician, why would you eliminate her?
Because the same system, if you learn that system that oppressed them, you'll also find out the same system that keeps you poor. That
Okay,
is
yes.
not that is not about the disdain of black people.
No, no,
We are too
I don't
wait,
think
wait,
that.
hold on, hold on, hold it, hold it, hold it.
I don't think that because we're
We
talking
are
about the
too, we are
psychological
too,
effect.
we are too small of a percentage of the population for this big focus to be on a dislike. But
I don't think it's
if you understand that those systems are related, the group that is the largest percentile of the labor base, the voter base, and the productivity of the country are poor whites. Once you learn these critical systems, you then become empowered to find out what I've been doing to you, and I cannot manipulate you.
So
I was thinking that this was a slight against Black people.
I don't think that.
This
Uh,
this is a mode to
it's a
protect
much bigger. So you can
white
tell.
poor whites
Well, you can tell
to
by.
not have the knowledge of how they are being controlled and manipulated.
So you know what made the decision for Fred Hampton to be eliminated, neutralized? That's what they call it in the FBI report. Neutralize him. He had the
The
ability.
desire to stop the rise of a Black Messiah is exactly what is said in the
I
COINTELPRO
I know.
papers.
Okay, wow. Well, I didn't know it said all that, but he had an extraordinary ability to speak to people that were in a class, a social class, regardless of race. It did not, race did not
Right,
and and
right,
and this what
right.
we're when we're talking about the confirmation, looking for confirmation, social poison, it really is not really about race. It really is about strengthening your mind, which operates and works like any other mind in any other race. It's really not about race. It is about
Race,
strengthening your mind.
race is an economic system that protects access to wealth for a particular group. That is the
Um,
function of race.
I just believe it's a false social construct because if you
But
start
wouldn't it be race
It's
and
it's
class
it's a
though?
genetic
yeah,
construct. It's not
race and
false.
class.
Now, what
I,
it's used for may be insincere, but
right.
the fact is, we have been intermingling for hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years, and you still have Black people, you still have Indian people, you still have Asian people. That genetic reality is race.
Well, you know what? It's
The
probably not a false social construct because these things make it real. Dominant culture,
Makes it real to some folk.
because it makes it, but it's a it's a false psychological theory,
political, yes,
So
right?
so
yes,
so Dr. Stevens,
is
I want to go back to Maslow's for a second, right?
Okay.
So can I have self-actualization and be gangster at the same time?
Yes, you can.
mhm,
Yes, you can. Bumpy Johnson reached self-actualization.
right.
You can,
So right. So
Hitler.
how other people perceive that,
didn't he? Didn't he reach self-actualization? Although it was ick.
Yeah, it's your zenith. Now you may be sick and twisted, but Trump,
Which is why you have to have things in control to stop evil like
yeah,
that.
you gotta have some guardrails. You gotta have some guardrails.
Because the one thing that a young person will ask when they're going through like the history of slavery, the history of the Holocaust, the history of any kind of genocide, like how did they get that power? What did they do to get that power? I'm like, that is when social norms go unchecked. That is when the masses don't rise up and say, and they just kind of collapse under pressure and under bullying.
yeah, but
That's when the
is
masses
it
don't
that?
rise up and it's like, no, this is where we're not going.
I have a question for you. Is it that, or are the masses that hateful truly in their nature? Was it that?
We have
Was
to,
it that the masses of whites fell under the oppression of native genocide, or were they like, yeah, we can go along with it? Same thing with slavery. Same thing with oppressing women. So
so
is the
you
nature
still go
just
back.
horrid?
You're still going back. I guess I'm trying to explain this. I know because I know it's hard to explain it outside of race. It's hard to even think about it. It's not race. It's power, privilege, and just, making your life easier than somebody else. It really does not have much to do with race. It really does. It's just you have the opportunity to do that. Now you make the decision on whether or not you're going to
Mm.
do that. And I and
This
I
is
say and I say
this.
that because in recent genocide situations, the people looked like each other. In Croatia, in Rwanda, those people looked just like each other. But they
Yes,
had different
but
ideas, and they wanted
Rwanda,
to take they wanted advantage. They wanted the
but
economic.
Rwanda was controlled by people who didn't look like them.
Yeah,
That's
but it
number one.
still was people that looked
And
like them.
And at a time, the British Empire controlled 2/3 of the globe.
See, now
And
here's what we have done. We have gotten away from that simple message of why confirmation, of of an individual who might be struggling with trying to figure out, why is acceptance creating anxiety and depression for me? And so
no,
we've gotten
we
into a
just went
global
from
topic.
micro to macro. It's the same conversation.
Yeah, we went to a global topic. Well,
Yeah, it's
people
micro to macro. It's the same conversation.
But people need answers so they can survive. They need, because the world situation and the race question, all that's a broader topic, and it's a topic that we probably should deal with just as a topic. But an individual who is trying to wake up from a nightmare or trying to get themselves out of a storm need
Mhm.
an answer now. Like
You know
what?
what? I disagree. I disagree. I
Okay.
think what people need are a series of questions to ponder.
They're not strong enough.
Um,
If you're trying to
well,
do basic
this is what
survival.
I'm saying. That's how you get strong, by the exercising of the mind. Albert Einstein said, if I had to answer a question and my life depended on it, and I only had 1 hour, I would use 55 minutes pondering every question and use the last 5 minutes to fix the problem. When everybody wants an answer because we want it over, and life is not about ending, life is about continuing. So when we actually have the proper questions to ponder, that is where our strength is. It's not the destination, it's the journey. So I think instead of trying to get people these answers, everybody is going to have different questions. Hence, they're going to have different answers. But if we can come up with universal questions that fit whomever to take them down their road,
Mhm.
that may be a strengthening exercise more so than a crippling, here's the answer, because
I like
nobody
to
is going to
come back.
have.
I like to come back to this topic if we can. If we can come back to this topic, devoid of the race question and all of those things, to talk about cognitive development, human
Mhm,
development specifically. What do I
mhm.
need? And I'll even agree to stay out of popular culture or hip hop. I'll agree to stay out of that. We really need to provide answers, or try to give people some things to think about on what you can do to survive that developmental stage or to thrive through that developmental stage. Because
So
we're
next,
time is
so
up. We've been
next
talking
week,
for an
what will be the topic? What will be the topic next week?
hour.
It's
Um,
you. It's you.
What,
What's the topic?
can I say this right quick? Because I don't want to overlook the impact of social Darwinism, social and cultural Darwinism, from the standpoint of who really has the powers to make change based upon how things have developed over time, and who actually has the power and who actually has the perceived power, and like where does that come from?
that's a good topic because we know that there is a shift out there. There's definitely a shift. There's a shift in basic civility. If we
Mhm.
cannot figure out how to be kind and respectful to each
Mm,
other. Now, there are some people
that's
that
a point.
are being
It's not
very
our
judgmental.
nature.
No, but at one point we at least knew what respect meant. You didn't overstep your bounds by stepping into somebody's life to control their person. You didn't,
Who?
people
When
really
you say
didn't
we,
do that as
who?
much. Well, people didn't do that as much. There was basic,
Europeans didn't.
well, no, they didn't. They didn't.
India, Africa,
Well, you're talking now. See, now
Australia.
you're talking about imperialism. Either we're going to talk
Yeah,
about psychological development or we're going to talk about imperialism. That's a total different topic. You can say they go together, but that's not the show we're talking. We're trying to do the show on how do
yeah,
people become psychologically and
yeah,
developmentally stronger. I know those
yeah.
things have something to do with it, but piling that on may not help us so much in giving people the tools. First of all, to explain what's happening to you. And second of all,
Okay.
giving you the tools on how we can throw that in and mix that in and make, but it's to me, it's getting us off topic. We need to focus on the here and
I'm
now
saying if
right in front of
I'm
us.
saying if we establish a foundation that people are inherently good,
Mhm.
as a historian, I find that problematic. People are not inherently good. And some people have histories of being worse than
Yeah, but
others.
they go, so we remember the real, real bad people because they did real, real bad things, right? And we know that, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. We know all of those things, and
And you
really
have to function within
corruption,
that
the
system
corruption
of those
comes
people.
from power. That corruption
Right.
really comes from power because it goes unchecked, and then or people are afraid to, and so the people who become martyrs are the people who confronted the power. They confronted the
Mm-hmm.
power, but every single one of those people, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Che Chavez, all of them said some of the same things.
Right.
Eventually, good will prevail. They all said that. They all believe that. And
And they
even
all
in,
died without seeing it.
yeah, but they created a paradigm shift. They still created a shift. They
Okay, but
created things.
again,
They created,
what I'm saying is that's church on Sunday.
well,
I'm
maybe,
telling you
okay,
everything's
so
going to
so
be all
maybe
right.
maybe we need more church because
But
we,
no, what I'm saying is, Nelson Mandela said the same thing. But at the end of the day, is the world much different in Nelson Mandela's time? No. Is it much different than Martin Luther King? No. Mahatma Gandhi? No. Is it the same group of oppressive people still activating that?
you
I'm saying
you really
in
do.
our
If you don't believe in a divine order, then you're going to be hopeless. You're just going to be hopeless. You're going to feel like,
okay,
okay,
when you say
I'm going to go to somebody's house. If you don't believe that there is a divine order,
a
there is
divine, okay,
that eventually the
but we're
divine
assuming
order will grab us like Play-Doh or
we're
silly
assuming that
putty
everybody
and
knows what
squeeze us
divine
back
order.
into shape like silly putty.
You're talking and not explaining what divine order is.
Well, what I'm
You're saying
saying is
you're assuming
something happens. I don't
what
know
is
what.
divine order.
Okay, what made D-Day happen? What made them sign the civil rights? What made that happen? Something made it happen where
Right.
good started to prevail and the world became the Play-Doh, shaped back into good. Like we're always going to have to do that here. That's why we need strong people. People have to be strong enough to confront someone who is trying to create a world that is not good for most people, but see, that again is another show. Like if we're going to help people be
About
psyched,
4, 5 shows. It was.
But you have to, I'm saying, in helping someone understand their circumstances, don't you have to clarify the circumstances they're in?
yeah, but who's going to care about imperialism when they got to go and do a double shift at the RV factory and break their backs, or at a double shift at the prime, to even make enough to live? They,
I could actually explain that, but I
well,
think
that's
that I
another
don't think
show.
that that's really what your point is.
Well,
Because that's how people start businesses and people begin to find out, oh, I'm on a hamster wheel. I'm going to do thus and so forth.
I think,
And now is everybody talented to do that? No. But these are the
yeah,
types of things that need to be described to people so they understand what they're in.
I still think
Uh,
that's unrealistic because the human,
okay, so
the, hu- the
telling you everything is going to be okay.
no, but you got to hear that sometimes. Some people have to hear that it's going to be okay. What
Okay.
strengthens you is knowing that
But
you're not alone. That
all right.
or
And
you can
but
just
we shall
declare,
overcome.
yeah, but
How did that work out?
it did create a paradigm shift. It did. At least
And did we read Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s
we
last book?
well, we got to a point where people had self-dignity or had, wanted to do better. That's probably the closest that we've gotten to police.
How you feel
I
about
know plenty.
me has nothing to do with how I feel about me. So that didn't create self dignity. Those people
So this,
actually
this
went
show
into
is actually
themselves and
about
worked.
it's just about people, most people being followers. People get lost because they need
Now,
they
okay,
need, people
I'll
get
go with
lost.
you on that now.
People
Now,
get
now we speaking some truths. Yeah, yeah.
I'm just saying.
Now, I'll go with you on that. But I do think people have to understand the environment they're in because people who are lost have they're not only suffering because of what's happening to them, they don't even know why it's happening. So even if I start to feel better, it's momentarily because in 10 minutes, this system is kicking me in the behind again. Well, maybe I need to learn the system. At the very least, I know when the kicks are coming so I can brace.
Hmm. No, I don't deny that you need to learn and acknowledge the system. If you don't know
And,
the
and
landscape
then
that you
when you're
try
talking
to
about how
terrain.
the mind works, I'm saying the biggest question when you're talking about imperialism, genocide, if you're talking about King Leopold II, you're talking about Stalin, you're talking about any of these people that were just the most horrible people in the
But
world,
what I'm
Genghis
telling you,
Khan.
most people don't care about those people. They're caring about the here and now. What is happening to me here and now? I don't have time to learn the history of the world. I need to know
But
how to stay strong and to move forward right now.
I'm so glad you said that. Remember, we were talking about the ancestors?
Well, okay, so you mean
That
the filial piety?
you gotta know. Yes,
But that
that is
that
the
that right
thinking.
there is like that goes to the household and how we strengthen raising kids.
No, it goes
The
to the
house.
mindset. It goes to the
Okay, it
mindset. Do
does. It goes
I?
to the mindset too.
Yes, but this is what I'm telling you. When I understand that the past connects to my present, I also understand the future does as well.
And so
So
we
if,
have to teach children that are dealing with poverty. And these are, of course, there's a high level of black and brown children that are dealing with that. There are other, cultures that's also dealing with that. But we have to explain, how the poverty pathway, how to get out of it, and how just because you're there right now doesn't mean you stay there. These.
but if I don't take the time to even understand what it is and who controls it, I am now subject to listening to the wrong people. I'm on there listening to the people saying that the new Smithsonian shouldn't be brown, it should be white. I'm going, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or telling me a whole bunch of nothing about nothing,
Mhm.
being misled, like Bacon's Rebellion, like the anti-miscegenation laws, like all those other things. All of this stuff is connected in a continuum, which is why in our curriculum, we don't just have
which is
emotional
which is
stability
connected back
classes.
to economic stability for a portion of the country, for certain people in the country. And when you talk about that, people start saying, "Oh, you're a socialist, you're," but it doesn't have anything to do with any of that except for how can we all, create a certain level of self-actualization where we're contributing citizens and not have to sacrifice ourselves so the next person can have a bigger stake. I mean, that's really, but I'm
Yeah,
more
we
into
sacrificing mean for like for our kids. What do you mean sacrificing?
sacrificing ourselves, like working in a hard labor job so
Okay.
that people can have lavish weddings. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Oh, okay. You mean
I'm
for
saying
the
you
wealthy
gotta
living off of the
figure out
poor?
how do I create stability for myself, and how do I do that by stabilizing myself both psychologically and physically. Well,
I think also to add on to that, because I'm glad you said that. I think that we understanding what principles guide us is highly important. I can look at the Constitution all day, but if I ignore the principles of the Constitution, then I have a bigger problem because the Constitution itself is not going to mean a lot to me unless I understand why they were developed anyway.
so
And I think,
go ahead.
go ahead.
You just
I
say
hear
something
what
and I'll say it
yeah.
after you're done.
So the principles of why we do certain things for me has always had to be at the forefront of why I'm teaching anyway. It's like, what makes you feel this way? Why do you feel this way? Okay, where does that come from? And so when I began to question those things with kids, then they began to dig deeper about, why they do things anyway. Did you really mean to do that? Like, to what degree did you mean to do that? Where'd you get this from? So to question, or I do what's called the five whys. If I keep asking them why, it makes them do what? Dig deeper into what the rationale was that precipitated the behavior anyway. And I think we ignore those things because we're not trained to ask those questions. We are trained to just deal with just the behavior and not deal with the what centers the behavior. Where does that come from?
Mm. So, I mean, those are some of the questions. Oh, your hand is up.
My educational process has now had to come from. Yes, sir.
I know he always agrees with you,
No, I
but
don't.
somebody said we need to give people questions to ponder. And
Said that, Doc.
he said that he has five whys, and if I keep asking them, they're going to start to think. Now that's not what this person said,
Yeah, but
but if I said who
see,
was right and
that's an
who's the
age
smartest,
appropriate tool.
he's going to say she is.
That's an
But
age appropriate tool.
he
What he's saying is an age appropriate tool for the age group. You are getting into information.
I can't win.
So
I
look,
can't win.
so we were dealing with the 18, that 12 to 18. That world imperialism, that stuff is too heavy for them. That's too heavy for us to teach them when we're trying to teach them how to stabilize just even their conscious of what's right and wrong, of their moral fabric. We're trying to show them that now. The intimacy stage, which is 18 to 40, okay, we can start getting into it in that age
I
group. But you
got
know
you.
what you're going to spark in that age group? You're going to
What?
spark anger. You're going to spark that,
Mhm,
like, oh my God, but we got to
mhm.
trust them with that
But
anger.
ask them why five times. And then
You didn't say
anger
that.
turns into process. But what I said
Now,
was
how
when
long is
you
this show? How long is this show? Because we're at
it's
one.
over 5, 10 minutes ago.
No, it's actually over 22 minutes ago. So is this show going to be an hour and 30 minutes? Or is this going to be
I guess I guess
okay? I just
I was just saying you said we need to give these people answers. I said we need to give them questions. You told me I didn't know what I was talking about.
I
He
don't think I
said the
said that.
same thing.
Are you
And
are
you
do
were
you have a
like,
beautiful
oh my
mind? You just
God, you
construct
are
a story.
so
He just
smart, Mr.
construct
Grimes.
these stories that are so
Mr.
false to
Grimes,
make
I
himself
don't know
important.
how you
I did
come
not
up with
say
these
that.
wonderful things.
You know
You
what? Let
just,
me just tell you this. I don't know why the whole world, right now, we're in Darnell's world. I don't know how the
Oh
whole
Lord.
world comes down on him. That sounds like some paranoia, schizophrenia to me. But,
I'm just saying,
but, because I
it's
don't
on
know where
tape.
you came up with that story
It's on
because
tape.
it's just untrue. It is
I
just,
have proof.
we're just, that is your perception. You need to take your meds before the show start,
I have proof. It's
not
recorded.
after the show. Let's get back to the people that is beyond Darnell Bowden. Let's get back to remedies
Oh.
for the people. How to avoid the social poison of seeking acceptance, of constantly seeking acceptance. How to
Are
avoid
we talking about kids or are we talking about grown folks?
we okay, remember the stages. Because see, you keep coming up with all them questions and you're forgetting the stages.
No, you said 18 to 40.
So
I'm just making sure you ain't
that's
switched up
the
the game.
so no, the stage right before that, which is the stage that's identity, that you determine your identity in that specific stage, identity and role confusion. That's the stage right before it, and that's ages 12 to 18, and then 18 to 40. And that's the intimacy stage, the stage where you develop relationships or you decide to just be isolated, right? So it's those two stages that would be affected the most by, social, by acceptance and by making mistakes on that road to social acceptance. And which,
Um,
when you make the
but
mistakes, it leads to self-medication, it leads to criminality, it leads to all of those things.
But isn't this levels? Like you want acceptance when you're a little kid, you want to play with the other kids. Then when you get a little older, you want dating. Then you get older, you want jobs and a family and career. So it's all present. It's all a natural part of it. It's just that you give that information as it is appropriate to that particular age group, but um it doesn't it doesn't it doesn't necessarily change the reality that that one, acceptance is natural, two, acceptance is good.
Oh, okay. How many minutes do we have here? Okay, so we're wrapping this up, right? Because we have 4 minutes. I tell you what, we're gonna let you wrap this up, Darnell, because you just made a statement.
Well, again, asking questions.
Oh God, he's making.
Five whys. Just, no, seriously. I think where we are having impasses are on our professions, um, where every carpenter sees a nail, every plumber sees a pipe, and when you see a social dynamic, you see a psychological framework. Where I see a sociological problem, I see a historical framework.
Mm-hmm.
And where you see a problem, you see an educational framework. This is another problem
So
that
no,
has
no,
always
no. Let's land on questions. Let's land on questions. Yeah, you should ask your question. What is going well? What is not going well? Why are the things not going well? What do I have the power to fix? Who can help me fix it? Where can I go to get some of the help? How can I get the help? What are some of the things I need to do to change? Like, what is true and what is not? So, yes, it can be
that's
fixed by
ingenious.
questions. It can
That's
be fixed
ingenious.
regardless of what the subject is.
That's ingenious. That's no matter who the person is, that's no matter how old they are. And if they learn to ponder that process, it doesn't matter what system they're in. It doesn't matter if it's race, if it's economy, if it's whatever.
Mhm.
If that approach is what's taken, that's going to apply to everybody.
And you know
Sometimes it's
what? You in the end, you also have to say, what are my blessings? And
Mhm.
how do I count my blessings? That's really where you start. And then, how do I hold on to my blessings? It's like you
Mhm.
really have to, that is what gives you the hope, that
well,
tomorrow I might have two peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, except
I actually think you need to write those questions down.
well, those are the questions that, I have to ask myself. We all get into the hard times where something is not going right and it seems overwhelming. And you have to really stop that train and stop
Stop
it
and
But
and
breathe.
ask those questions.
I think that's excellent. It's an excellent addition into your
Way to end.
research because that is that is where we agree, which means we agree on one thing.
Well, I tell you what we agree on. Both Mr. Grimes and myself are hungry. And so we need to
I
go.
was trying to eat before y'all got on here
You
arguing
know
with
what?
me,
Our
and then
Maslow's
Mr. Grimes
hierarchy of
agreed
needs,
with me and was
We
scared to
psychophysiological
at
say that
the
he
needs is
bottom.
under
agreed,
We at the
threat.
that he
bottom.
disagreed with you, and that's just how it always goes. But you guys are wonderful, and I'm sure this is going to make some wonderful videos. Maybe we will get to see this video before Christmas.
I'm going to send this to you right now. I'm going to share it through Google, right? I'm going to give you access, both of you access through Google.
All right.
Mhm.
I'll ask my son how
And
what that
between now
means.
and the next show, we need for you to get your attitude together.
What? He agreed with me.
We need to get, we're just going, that's an inside story. We might let you
Look,
in on it
see,
a little
that's
later
what
on.
happens when you won't argue with people. When
We're going
you
to let you guys
remove
in on
yourself
how you work
from the
with Dr.
argument,
Bolton.
See, I've been reading Nelson Mandela's
Here
autobiography.
we
I'm
go.
a peaceful
Here we
man.
go. We are so far away from our peanut butter sandwich now, Mr. Grimes.
Well,
All right, y'all take care of
now,
yourselves. Good to see y'all.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Until next time.
Oh God, here
salam
we go.
alaikum.
I can take a
Walaikum
salam.
salam. Bye. Goodbye.
Oh my God.